My aim with all my therapy patients, and this was true before I was a child fellow, is to make therapy fun before it's anything else. And I think that fun is also part of helping people find meaning again.
How to be patient.
Welcome back to How to Be Patient Season 3. We heard your comments of praise, your comments of critique, and we've listened to the ones that we like. But we are here to talk about Existential Psychotherapy Part 4, the one that everyone has been waiting for, or at least I've been waiting to yap about, joined by my co-host, Margaret, who is also a psychiatrist in training, but she's actually completed the main part of her training, and I'm still just a resident.
Done with adults. They know
Just
that.
a resident?
Are people listening for the first time? If you're new here, hi.
If you just stopped by, let us reintroduce ourselves.
You were looking for meaning in life. We're on the couch. So it's a therapy episode. Or it's an existentialism in this case.
And we are covering our existence in 1 hour. So we should actually have plenty of time at the end to talk about other things we want, because I'm picturing we get done with this in about 15 minutes.
Well, I'm excited to talk about the survey thing you sent me, because I got both like a laugh out of it, and I also want to talk about it. So I'm excited for this episode.
Okay, let's do it. So like every day, we're going to start with an icebreaker. And today's icebreaker is, what has been your Sisyphean task of the week?
The week just started. Okay. Do you have one?
Last week counts too.
Do you have one already? Can you go first?
Sure. What boulders I've been pushing?
Yeah.
I've always got boulders.
It's a nice boulder.
Yeah.
That was a Shrek reference.
I would say I don't dread pushing every boulder, but the Sisyphean task of the week for me has been my plant care. So as spring has been coming around, it's been raining a lot. There's a lot of fluctuations in humidity. And every day I've realized that there's a benefit to rounds, because I round every morning on my houseplants and just do it. It doesn't take long. It's like surgical rounds, essentially. I just kind of stick my finger in the soil. I assess for dead leaves. I see how everyone's doing. I say, okay, and then I move on. So that's kind of been my Sisyphean task, but it does give me some joy. Like, I still like rounding on the houseplants. Like, do I belong in the hospital? I like rounding too much. And I have a little like mini greenhouse on my patio that I called Plant Hospital.
Oh, that's cute.
So it's like parts of it are coming back to me. Yeah, I have a whole monitor in there that it tracks the humidity and temperature over time. So I can actually see how the humidity fluctuates throughout the day with the sun cycle. It's kind of fun. Yeah. Or just nerdy. Those are two ways to look at it.
I feel like, though, that's like you enjoy, like one must imagine Sisyphus enjoys, or whatever, the internet misquotes or quotes, right?
Yeah. One must picture Sisyphus happy.
Yes. What is one for you, though, that is like, I wish I could drop this boulder down the side of the mountain and never push it up again?
That would be my Air Force JKO trainings.
What's a JKO training?
It's Joint Knowledge Online is the acronym. Everyone who's worked a government job is familiar with these. And the thing that's like sucks about my residency, let me reframe. The thing that's amazing about my residency is that we have the opportunity to work on multiple sites, multiple level 1 trauma centers, all with their own individual training systems, and each of them has their own training upkeep. So,
oh gosh,
I wouldn't have it any other way. Why should my HIPAA training at one hospital be valid at another? That doesn't make any sense to me, so I should redo it 3 times. That's been my negative, or
that's extremely
however you want to frame it, Sisyphean task. Those boulders are very frustrating to me, especially when they're like
Sisyphus doing EMR training.
Did you see that? There was a tweet where someone said, what if we created a point system where Sisyphus could earn points for the ways in which he pushes the boulder up the hill, or the amount of times he does, and then he could redeem these points for stickers or decals to put on the boulder?
That would work on me.
It already works on a lot of people.
It already works on me. I literally have star stickers that I use daily.
It's like looks down at like summa cum laude on your diploma, and you're like, this is different though, right? This is different.
This is a really good sticker.
Yeah, and the boulder, like, it's a sick boulder. Yeah, like I got a new skin for my boulder. Now it kind of just looks like a bowling ball.
Now you're having a great time. Yeah.
So I'm curious, what's your Sisyphean task? Positive or negative,
Okay.
or both?
I'm going to give you a positive one and a negative one. A positive one, you know this. Our listeners know this from how many episodes we've done on this, but I do think exercise is a positive one for me at this point. Like this morning, first of all, shout out our step challenge people as always. But I've officially signed up for my like running this summer because and running I use very loosely, more like jogging. But I'm doing the Newport 10-miler in Rhode Island that's on like May 31st. And then me and my friend always do the 10K that's at the Portland Headlight in Maine. And then I'm doing the like Acadia half marathon in like the day before my birthday. And like that, between that and then teaching Pilates and like belonging to the yoga studio I teach at, I just feel like it's like something I enjoy every day. Like even though the first mile always sucks, and even like the first 10 minutes of teaching or like working out, I feel like always feels creaky and slow. But I do feel like that's a Sisyphean task that like I have to do both for my brain and just like my overall like not having back pain management. But it's one I really enjoy. Maybe similarly nerdily to your house plant rounding.
It's a Sisyphean task that feels better the farther the boulder gets up the hill.
Yeah, and one must imagine that Sisyphus would have loved the marathon.
Yeah, I think like in today's modern world, we have so many of these tasks that we just have to keep up with. It's like spinning plates. So I feel like if Sisyphus was in modern hell, he wouldn't have a single boulder to push, but he'd have an infinite number of plates that he just had to keep spinning. And every time you spin a plate, it loses momentum. You have to go back and spin it again. And you just do that.
He's like trying to like roll like 10 different barrels up the mountain. So he's just like running back and forth and like pushing up. But then one starts rolling down the mountain. Well, the other one pushes up.
He gives it a big heave and it goes halfway up. And he's like, nice, I can go push another one now. Oh, that first one's coming back down.
It's like I'm falling behind on all my boulders. A bad one, because it's tax season, taxes. Mostly because like I feel like taxes were, this is so boring, but like I feel like taxes were complicated for me this year because of like Substack, and then like working on Substack's different and Etsy's different, and then like random money from social media that is like not very much, but like still needs to be in your taxes. And those are like not counted apart. And so I feel like that just fills me with dread when I was doing them. Now they're done. But like that.
Yeah. Like, why do they hide the tax forms so deep in there?
I don't know.
Like I don't know why it's so hard to get my tax forms from like TikTok. And it's not like a huge sum of money.
Right.
Because it's just like the TikTok creator program. But come on, guys. Front and center. You know, like, let's see, I want my profile picture and then just like click here for your 1099.
Yeah.
I'd be happy with that.
Does it have to be so difficult? Like it does feel like they're hidden. Well, and like Substack doesn't do, like it does it through like something called Stripe. And
yeah, I know.
So
I've heard
then
things
I have
about
to go to Stripe. And then Stripe is like, you need to set up your Stripe account. And I'm like, what? So that's not a bad problem to have, like in the scheme of things, enjoying the view from the mountain that I'm pushing the boulder up. But taxes scare me because I'm like, what if I get it wrong?
I hope everyone should be done with their taxes by the time they hear this. So
the rest of you are committing tax fraud.
That's right. That's the easiest way to do it. Well, after we finished pushing our boulders, or we'll take a break from pushing the barrels up the hill to talk about how we find some semblance of meaning after we come back from this quick break.
The only person who is more stressed out by our medical training than us is our moms, because they hear every single bad test, every question mark around admissions, and every bad night call. And this Mother's Day, I want to celebrate my mom by giving her an anxiety-relieving, comforting gift like she gives me. But this time it's going to be from Cozy Earth.
sometimes we want to say more than thank you. And this time, a great bathrobe and slippers is going to be our way of saying thank you for putting up with us all this time.
One of the great things about Cozy Earth is that everything that they make has a 10-year warranty or 100-night sleep trial. So just like your mom was there through all 100 nights of night shift that you went through, so will your Cozy Earth robe and slippers.
Yeah, and you can get those nights back, unlike the night shift. So let this Mother's Day be a reminder that she deserves care too. Discover a Cozy Earth and how it turns routines into moments of softness and ease. Head to cozyearth.com and use our code PATIENT for an exclusive 20% off. And if you see a post-purchase survey, make sure you let them know that we sent you.
Because home starts with mom.
And we are back to talk about meaning. And I really mean it this time. It's going to be a structured episode to the best of my ability. So, to kind of orient everyone who's not listening to these in series, there are 4 fundamental problems of man described in Existential Psychotherapy. We're reading from this book by Irvin Yalom titled Existential Psychotherapy. And the 4 problems are as follows. There is death, which is that fundamentally all humans will die. This is a postulate, obviously. It's a theory that we cannot prove.
Allegedly, we die.
So far, no one has beat this. So I'm just going to kind of run with that one. The next being that we
Hello,
are...
it was just Easter.
Moment of silence. Second being freedom, that we are ultimately free to make our own decisions and then therefore must be responsible for those consequences. And thirdly, that we are isolated, so we are existentially alone, that no matter how close you get to another human, you're destined to have your personal private experience of the world and therefore death, which kind of circles back around to number 1. And finally, the last postulate is that for some reason, humans appear to require meaning to live. That's the initial postulate. The second part of that is life does not seem to have an inherent purpose or meaning to bestow upon you. So we have to determine or discover our own meaning. And those 2 problems are at ends with one another. It's like saying humans need water to live, but there doesn't seem to be any water in sight. So we can either make it or we can discover it. But you got to do something.
There's, in theory, water. Somewhere.
In theory. So kind of going back to that first postulate, so that like humans need meaning to live. The implication of that is attempting to live life without meaning causes considerable distress. And I think the best way to describe that is this book Margaret and I read earlier this year, or I guess late last year. It was Bullshit Jobs. That entire book is essentially a thesis on what happens if you try to pursue a meaningless life. And what if Books Could Kill did an interesting cover on Bullshit Jobs.
My fave podcast mention.
Yeah, I thought they had some good takes. There were some things that I wanted to defend the book a little bit on, but we won't get into the nuance of it. The point is that like a bullshit job is a job that basically contributes nothing to society, and the person conducting the job is intimately aware of it to the point where they cannot justify themselves doing the job, but they still have to keep up the charade. And the entire book is about the psychological injury of living that experience every day. Basically, pushing a boulder that hurts every time you push it rather than one that makes you feel better. So the way that we can know this actually, or we try to measure it, is with these different random scales. And I never came across one of these scales until I was prepping for this pod, which is like pretty fun. So one scale, and Margaret's smiling because I sent this to her to take a look at, is the purpose in life scale. And we'll tag this to the end of the pod. But Margaret, it's essentially like a PHQ-9, but for like, do you have meaning in your life? And I'm curious, Margaret, what were your thoughts about the PIL?
Well, I was thinking about the DBT episodes we did in dialectics again, and was just struck that, and granted, this is not the only kind of scale that goes between 2 extremes, but that it was like the questions are like, like rank yourself where you are. And it's like, I have no meaning in life. My life is a purposeless wasteland versus like that one meme that everyone posts on TikTok that's like in like rainbow colors and it's just like a small creature going like, like, those are the answers. The answer like were like happiness versus like Eeyore and like Inside Out and Winnie the Pooh respectively. And so it was like I was going through it and I was like, I don't know, I feel like I'm hitting a lot of threes because I'm trying to be dialectic and wise minded as I fill it out.
So yeah, I've got to pull up. Let me give you all a flavor for these different back and forths we're looking at. So we have after retiring, this is number 7, I would, and 1 being the lowest, loaf completely the rest of my life. Or 5 at the highest, do some of the exciting things I've always wanted to do. Concerning the freedom to choose, I believe humans are, at the low end, completely bound by limitations of heredity and environment, or on the high end, totally free to make all life choices.
Which I feel like that's been the theme of this season.
Yeah. And then the final one, or the final 2, facing my daily tasks is either on one end, a painful and boring experience, or on the other end, a source of pleasure and satisfaction. And finally, I have discovered no mission or purpose in life or a satisfying life purpose. And then you tally it up and just give them a score. So if you had all 5s, that's a score of 100, and all 1s is a score of 20. So you technically can't get a 0 on the purpose in life scale. The lowest you can get is a 20. What is interesting about this is that when you look at patients who are in meaningless jobs, they are much more likely to score low on the PIL, or even people that experience other disruptions in their life.
Yeah.
So,
or if they're depressed, like if they have like a biologic depression, if such a thing as pure biologic depression exists, which I kind of think it does. The other part that's interesting in looking at that and considering like the bullshit jobs book is, as you said earlier, as people, like the person working the job defines it as useless. So there are people they talk to that he goes to this book and he's like, you would think that this, that, or the other person would think this was a bullshit job, but no, they feel it's meaningful and they're doing X, Y, and Z. And so it's interesting to look at it through that lens and look at the thing of like, how does someone make that decision and kind of regardless of the quote unquote objective reality they're living in.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to me. And I think as I go further into my neuropsych training, I'm really curious about how depression affects hopelessness. And like, I think it'd be something kind of fun to maybe understand more. I think there's a fair body of research on it. It's just not in a place where I can fully understand it, I guess. I'll have to learn a lot more. That's how I put it. The other, I just kind of looked up some of this stuff really quick. The other interesting correlations with PIL scores are related to stuff beyond mental health issues. So you did a great job pointing out, depressive symptoms, anxiety are associated with low PIL scores, but also physical health risks. So someone did a study on grip strength, walking speed, and found it to be low grip strength was correlated with low PIL scores.
We're going to start a How to Be Patient Hope Core protocol. Inner Circle member club.
Yeah, hop on our Etsy for our grip strength.
You're just going to see us using one of those grip strength in life.
Don't worry about the correlation causation stuff. That's all just a hullabaloo anyways. The demographic factors, so lower income, fewer years of education, are associated with low PIL scores. And
which also makes sense from did your efforts reinforce that effort and autonomy and internal locus of control actually makes things.
Are they rewarded?
Are they rewarded? Are they there?
Do I get a payoff? Yeah. And then childhood adversity, childhood abuse, loss of a parent are also associated with low PIL scores. And
why do you think that is?
I think it's probably just related to your outlook on the world being just or being good. That has a lot that influences your purpose in life score. The other thing is that strong feelings of isolation or loneliness are associated with the low PIL score. And we know from the last episode that childhood abuse and adversity in your childhood really impairs your ability to form a needless relationship with another human being that I-thou relationship. So if you struggle to form an I-thou relationship, you're more likely to experience loneliness. It's harder for you to find satisfying, fulfilling relationships that contribute to your purpose in life. So that would be my hypothesis. Who's to say, though? All these are correlations. What if having a low purpose in life just decreases your grip strength? Who knows?
You hear that, fellas? You will
You
have
want to get
purpose
started in
in
the gym,
life.
find purpose right now.
Something chicks love.
I wanted to, gosh, I should have this page ready, but there's a really interesting kind of excerpt from Tolstoy, though, which is
Ooh.
kind of actually in direct contradiction to what we're talking about, which is that a low purpose in life score is correlated with like low economic opportunity. But Tolstoy writes, and I'm going to paraphrase this because I don't have the page ready, that
What book is this?
this is just Existential Psychotherapy.
Oh, nice.
It's
cool.
just the book.
The book. I was like,
the class
are we reading
book.
War and Peace? What are we reading?
Yes, she's a fat one. I mean, he's a fat one. Or I don't know how to gender this book. The book is thick, is what I'm trying to say. So Tolstoy goes, I think my gardener must know something I do, because here I am pampered in my house, writing books all day with someone's dream job, and he seems much more satisfied with his life than I am. And there's kind of a deeper aspect to that. And I think a lot of people listening to this podcast they're probably familiar with that statistic, or it's often misquoted, but that more intelligent people are more likely to experience depression.
It's not funny. I feel like I'll see it on Facebook and then everyone kind of comments are always, it's like one of those memes that are like,
Every depressed person is like, I knew I was smart.
I was
Thanks
smart.
for letting me know. All along. So anyways, there's when you kind of think about conceptualizing meaning, there's kind of different layers. And one layer that we get into the book is called the galactic perspective, which is probably what Tolstoy's tapping into. Yeah. So there are a couple of different ways to think about meaning, which is ultimately kind of the bullet that I'm getting at here, which is, what is meaning in your life? Is there personal meaning, or is there meaning in the universe? And as people are contemplating different levels of their meaning, it seems to not necessarily matter where the meaning comes from, as long as you just have it. So that gardener who's like, I'm taking care of the lilies and I'm not thinking too hard about nothing, he's got meaning. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm meaning about what he means? But Tolstoy, who's sitting there going, no, what about our cosmic purpose? Everything I ever do in my entire life will ultimately lead to nothing. And everyone who knows me, or who has known anyone who ever knows me, will ultimately die and will all disappear as endless, non-consequential specks on an indifferent world.
Navel gazers.
That's called the cosmic perspective. And people get stuck there. And I think
do they always get stuck there in this theory? Okay.
It's like a tunnel.
But like,
which we'll get
mean,
to.
Like you are like does cosmic always have to be negatively associated?
In all the reading I did in this book, it essentially led to negative outcomes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Or like being stuck there did. It's really like kind of your answer to it. And when we get to kind of the end of the episode, we'll see that the answer that Yalom provides is more from like a Buddhist perspective. But there are multiple ways to answer the cosmic question.
Okay.
So I guess I know that you kind of come from a Christian faith, and I had a good talk with one of my attendings about kind of existential psychotherapy and these problems. And he said, I think eloquently, that religion offers robust answers to all of the problems of existentialism. Like that's why it offers like such catharsis for people. So I think it's almost like there's like a parallel track sometimes where, you know, these are problems that we're like describing that every human has to come across, and then you know, people of faith are like, whoa, like I've had an answer to that for a long time.
Yeah. I think it does, and I don't disagree with that. But I also think that a lot of faith traditions, whether for me it's Catholicism to some extent, But other faith and spirituality traditions, they offer you a way. Sometimes they offer answers, but they also offer you a way of standing in the posture of not knowing and like living the questions as in that one poem Rainier Marie Rilke wrote in the Letters to a Young Poet. So this kind of like ability to live within a question without collapsing it or live within mystery,
Hmm.
um, which can be done without religion, and I think is done well in poetry and literature and other kind of transcendental approaches to the world or existentialism. But I would say like I think that's why I'm curious, like the cosmic question, because I think I don't know this part of existentialism. Like, what is the cosmic question? Like, can you reword it so I can understand what it is? Because I think I'm missing that.
Yeah. Well, it's not necessarily a question. It's
Oh,
the
okay.
the galactic perspective in existentialism, and it's essentially you're viewing yourself in the like despair of the thought about how unimportant you are. You have a
Oh, okay.
crushing feeling of
Just being
like
a tiny speck.
worthlessness. Yeah, it's what I'm talking about is that shudder you get when you're out at a camping trip and you're looking up at the stars and you're like, wow, man, like we really are just specks on a floating rock. And you go and it's when it transitions from that wonder to like nothing I do really matters then. Nothing I'll ever do matters. What's the point in doing anything? That
Okay.
that kind of like nihilistic despair, that's the galactic perspective that I'm
Yeah.
kind of getting at. And people they get stuck in there like an eddy in a river and they can't get out.
It's interesting because like the thing that I don't feel, I don't think that my life personal experience, which I think is the only thing we can kind of speak from and are therefore biased by often, is not having experienced that. But to your point about like religion offers answers or offers a frame, the way that I view Catholicism and like the history of Christianity or Catholicism is like the awe goes into awe because there's this sense of like nature is nature and the universe and all of this expansiveness is a sign of something sacred and divine. And you are a part of the sacredness and divine, as in Catholicism or Christianity, God becomes man, right? And so it's because I'm a cradle Catholic and I like went to Catholic school. And so this has been like kind of drilled into me. Um, it's just interesting because I'm trying to put my own life experience into it and understand it. And there's like a sidestepping of that part for
Yeah.
me, I think, because the religion has been there for so long and doesn't mean I don't have other doubts about suffering, but it's just I'm just trying to think through this because I feel like this is a new part of existentialism I'm not familiar with.
Right. So it's almost like this perspective that may fill others with wonder and then crushing loneliness can fill you with a sense of belonging, almost in a way that you are recognizing that you're part of the beauty of God's kingdom.
Yeah. Well, and okay, this is the last time that I know we should get on with it, but it reminds me of the poem that everyone loves from Mary Oliver, um, which I'm going to read because someone DM'd me or DM'd the podcast page and was like, I felt so seen in that one episode when we were talking about like Jim Bros and like the Sylvia Plath girls. But so
Hmm.
Wild Geese, so this just to put in perspective because she's not religious, is the poem that starts, "You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves." It goes on. And then eventually she says, "Whoever you are, no matter how lonely the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things." So, like, that feeling. And so it is, for me, it is religious, but also like I'm trying to square this with how the existentialists would think about like Mary Oliver or think about these other things. But that is my last tangent for this. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. No. And these are hard questions, and I think that's a great passage that helps like tie together how you feel to as one of the wild goose is geeser.
Yeah.
So um, the kind of next part will we'll go into the different frameworks that people tried to answer this question of meaning, both kind of personal and in the world. And this is at its core the foundation of a lot of philosophies that we see. What is the meaning of life? And in a lot of ways, what is the greatest good that we should pursue achieving? And then whatever is the greatest good that we want to debate about, then we'll kind of pursue that. So I'm going to start out with the number one hater of all this, which is Jean-Paul Sartre, who advocated greatly for meaninglessness. He actually just wanted to lean in on the complete other side and says life is meaningless. I've actually thought about this cosmic perspective, and I've concluded there's no point in doing anything. Just lean into pure nihilism. And I want to take a second to kind of take that stance apart, because that is a very common stance that a lot of people will have, especially when they're in kind of their own pit of tribulations, I guess I'll say.
What was the purpose of him having that stance?
That is the an excellent observation. Sartre found a lot of meaning in needing to tell other people that life was meaningless or was meaningless.
Is that why what is he like? How does he defend it though?
Oh,
because is it just life is meaningless? Because he obviously did a lot, right? Like you're saying, he found meaning in writing and doing all these things. What was the secondary part of life is meaningless, ...
It's essentially that because there is no inherent or prescribed meaning, that human existence precedes any predefined purpose, essence, or defined plan, then we're
free.
Because there is no inherent meaning, then anything we make up, it's like building sandcastles in the sand, and they're just going to wash away with the tide. So anything you do is just made up, but you can't call that a divine meaning if you're just making it up. That's his argument.
Right.
And that's also me paraphrasing his argument. I'm probably getting this wrong because I haven't read a lot of Sartre, but I guess that's kind of my understanding of it.
But I mean, I guess the kind of light side of the shadow of that is that you are free to create and live your life however you want to, and that your life is yours and there's no imposed meaning or value system upon you.
Right. But I guess you have to see the true belief that life is utterly meaningless as 0 Kelvin. Because the second you say oh, life is meaningless, therefore I can do what I want, aren't you just describing meaning? Because doing what you want is something that has meaning to you, right?
Not necessarily. I could just be doing pure hedonism.
But hedonism has meaning.
Hedonism doesn't necessarily have meaning. Hedonism is just that it's a body sensation, which would be human experience preeminent of I'm just going to do whatever feels good in the moment without, I don't need to inhibit myself or do this, that, or the other, or get in the rat race. I can just go and have a great breakfast at a French cafe and then go have 4 affairs. And
that sounds pretty meaningful to me. I think we're giving too much weight to the concept, because meaning is just any desire to move your life in any vector or any kind of direction. It doesn't need to be of a higher purpose or a higher calling. Does that
right? Well,
so me just doing something for the sake of pleasure, that's
got it.
I have purpose now, right? It's hedonism. So
Okay.
you can't that's why I'm saying it's mutually exclusive with pure distilled down to its core essence meaninglessness. That is incompatible with hedonism, which may have different levels of higher meaning or contemplation of the good or the just than some other concepts of meaning, but it still has more than life is meaningless.
Okay.
That's you kind of see what I'm trying to get at, where that's why I'm saying it's 0 Kelvin. Any degree
that there's
of
just
heat you put into this, that's meaning.
Yeah, your sense is there's just, his view is kind of there's just not directionality, and if you start having any, it's kind of then now you are moving towards something.
Right. That's why it's ironic. So because if life is meaningless, certainly not telling people that life is meaningless is just as meaningless as telling people that they do. So why have you done anything? Even and I guess this is to get like philosophically snarky, but if you truly believe that life is meaningless and you want to complete suicide, you certainly would think that there's meaning in attempting suicide. Like that is still a vector that you're moving towards.
Okay,
So
but here's another quote from Sartre. Like, man is condemned to be free because once thrown into the world, he's responsible for everything he does. It is up to you to give life a meaning.
yeah, so I'm using some of his extreme views, but he does
Okay.
come back around to existentialism.
Got it. Okay. So he's just saying there's no meaning. We're done here. Everyone
And then
go home. Like
I guess
what
to be a Sartre apologist, like the meaninglessness at the core, what I'm describing is like pure nihilism, which is not what Sartre is.
got it. Okay.
But that's if you take that and run into like nihilism, I guess.
Got it. Okay. And so now you need to debunk this one.
No, I think the debunking was essentially saying that like if you try to go to life is purely meaningless and will never have any meaning, then that is kind of oxymoronic. That's kind of what
Gotcha.
that was the
Okay.
point. Because any amount of like desire you have to do something is something with meaning. So the next kind of framework that we've already teased a little bit is hedonism. So hedonism is seeing life's meaning as the pursuit of pleasure in its essence. And that can be anything from the like debaucherous experiences that we classically like associate with pleasure, drinking, drugs, sex, gambling. Like I was just in Vegas visiting my sister this weekend. I think you can find just about anything that you would like consider like classically hedonistic there. But hedonism at its core is like doing something for the feelings that you'll get out of it. So um, in the book, Yalom argues that even like doing like charity or something, if it makes you feel good, is at least in part hedonistic because you're obtaining a positive feeling out of doing this thing for other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess hedonism isn't necessarily like a philosophy that the wheels will ultimately fall off on. I think if you're like looking at the, bestial drives that you would see in Vegas, that's the only way you live your life. I think it'd be tough, but a lot of people really are kind of driven by like hedonistic principles. Like even a bucket list is hedonism. It's all the fun, pleasurable experiences that you want to get, and it's actually one kind of brings us into Frankl's philosophy, which has 3 tiers to it, and one of them is hedonism. So
Victor?
Viktor Frankl, yeah,
Big
the
B.
one and only.
Logotherapy. Number 1, number 2, number
He's our
3.
guy. So, Viktor Frankl describes 3 types of meaning that humans take or find in their life, 3 flavors. And the first one we've already described, which he says is experiential meaning, which is what can you get from the world? The world is a fruit tree. What can I harvest and enjoy? And that's kind of like the hedonistic perspective. The second one that he describes is the creative meaning. So that's like, what can you give to the world? What can I construct? What either like with my artistic works or my legacies or even just my contributions to the experiences of others and like leave my mark on the world. So those 2 things are often kind of the push-pull that give people a lot of meaning. But he does describe a third one. And I find this one pretty interesting, which is the attitudinal position towards meaning. And I think you're smiling because you're familiar with all these. But
Well, I just think his book is like the best, like his most like Man's Search for Meaning is probably the best explanation of all 3, but particularly this like attitudinal holding when he talks about being in the concentration camps and like holding the idea of his wife, who he didn't know if she was alive or dead and thought she was probably dead, but just the like moving towards the image of her in his mind as a way to get through the camp, even though he kind of like knew/thought she was probably dead. I'm why I was smiling, not because that's like happy, but like he just writes about it from such like an experience of obviously horrific situation, but depth of like, this is how I use this to get through. And talking about other people in the camp of like, this is what the people who I noticed made it through had.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I don't think there's a more unique or potent book written about that. And I borrow a lot from like kind of the attitudinal position of meaning because I think in a lot of ways, sometimes find the experiential one unsatisfying. But the attitudinal one resonates a lot with me. I know when I was a med student and was rotating through the ICU, and I guess even on internal medicine wards, and I was seeing a lot of different scenarios where people are coming to end of life care and interacting with palliative care. The largest takeaway I had from that, and something that gives me peace, is this like resolution I had that I just want to like face life with face death with dignity. Not with like I don't want, you know, tubes around me, staying full code, pleading to try everything at the end. I know death is coming, and I just want to face it with dignity. And I think it's strange because I didn't know it was the attitudinal perspective at the time, but that was something that gave me a sense of meaning just by like coming to that conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, like that's the primary problem that most people will have to find with or apply the attitudinal sense of meaning is towards their inevitable death. But it can apply to any situation that you ultimately can't control or can escape.
Yeah. It makes me think of the stuff we've talked about when we did the episode on acceptance and commitment therapy, which has a lot of overlap with this. Of often acceptance and commitment therapy is helpful when we can't change some part of the situation or illness or whatever it is, like whether it's chronic pain or OCD. Um, and the acceptance or the willingness is kind of accepting that for right now, the experiential part of this is not going to be the thing that brings you meaning, but the way that you do it could be. And then the creative part, like also that you were saying, could be, but especially like, this is how I do this, even though, you know, I have chronic pain and I can't move around like I used to. I can tend a garden up on a shelf in, you know, little individual pots and pans, even though I can't work the land that I used to be a farmer for the last 75 years. I can do this. And I think it's such an important way of helping people move through the world when they get to points that require that way of surviving, I think.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm glad it's included because I think intuitively a lot of us can come to the creative and experiential, but I think the third one is the strongest.
I mean, I think that's what
So
like modern culture and social media shows the first two. But the last one is something that I think is only celebrated in like the most extreme kind of hope core case videos. And I think that the world's mental health would be a lot better if that was something that was what people were consuming more often, was this third one of how do I live in a way that, I don't know, is admirable,
how do I
is
face
good.
the music?
Yeah. Well, but how do I live the thing that I've always been trying to live, even when my life is different? And like, how do I stay the course through the end?
Hmm. So in summary, we from this section, humans need meaning to live is the postulate. You can disagree with that if you'd like. And there's no apparent road signs that just tell us we're meaning this way to meaning the next 200 miles, like it's some kind of Buc-ee's or something. But we have found that humans find meaning in a couple of different ways. The ways we experience stuff, create stuff, our attitude towards things, which boils out into hedonism. Meaninglessness in its purest form is a bit paradoxical, but if you're not too concerned about that, Preston will misquote Sartre probably and lead us on a fun discussion and a hypothetical chase. But when we come
We'll talk about
back,
in the Spotify comments.
we're find us in the Spotify comments, please. We will ground this a little bit. And how do you actually talk about meaninglessness with your patients? Because it's certainly fun to chin scratch and talk about all these philosophies, but what happens when they show up in the clinic after these messages? And we are back. And we mean it this time. I can say that probably probably two more times, I think, to make that joke.
They're just like written on a whiteboard behind his desk, and he's just crossing one off.
Yeah, there's a
each
little
joke.
elf on my window, and he's tallying the amount of times I've said we mean it, and I just did it again. Oh God, he's crossing it over. He's threatening me with his body language. Let's get back to this podcast. So, when a patient comes to therapy and they say their chief complaint is meaninglessness, I just have no meaning in my life. open floor. How do you approach that? Or what are even things that you think about?
Oh, I mean, my aim, I don't know that this is right. And I kind of feel like this has been my aim the whole
There's no
time.
right or wrong answer here. This is open floor.
Well, I think this might be wrong. But my aim with all my therapy patients, and this was true before I was a child fellow, is to make therapy fun before it's anything else. And I think that fun is also part of helping people find meaning again. Because I feel like when someone comes in, it could mean a lot of different things. It could mean depression. We would work that up. It could mean, horrible grief and trauma. We would work with that in a specific way. Or it could mean just like really like lack of engagement with their life for whatever reason. But I feel like I have no meaning in my life is this thing that's almost like it's out here, out in the world, like up in the sky. Someone's going to come and give you this like big grand finish line of now you have meaning in your life. And I think I like to make therapy fun, one, because it makes them come back and be intrigued and be kind of like, okay, that wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be round one. This is before all the exposure therapies and everything, or all the exposure and response prevention where things get hard. But like, I think that there's a lot of with meaning where our field and just people in general can get very like intellectualizing, cognitive, pie in the sky. And my personal belief is that meaning is found and made as much as it is thought of or believed. And so I start by making therapy fun so they want to come back, and I try to make therapy experiential in terms of giving homework and other things over time. And then as we do therapy, reflecting back to them what seems to be resonating the most and kind of lighting them up and helping them find purpose, and seeing if I can follow their lead like closely and think about them and kind of allow reverie to be the thing that helps me reflect on them and then bring back to them like, does this feel like part of something deep in you? That's my approach. Preston, what is yours?
Would you be surprised if I said you were exactly right?
I thought you said there wasn't right or wrong.
Well, I decide that I'm the king here. This is a Preston-led episode.
All hail the king.
Yeah, so I guess you've already hit on the bullets that I was going for, which the first one is that the problem of meaninglessness cannot be taken at face value when the patient comes in with it as their chief complaint. So, it can be a trap for the therapist to want to join the patient in this toil about what is the meaning of life.
Good word.
Because, spoiler alert, you're not going to find it. Nietzsche didn't find it. Hume didn't find it. Sartre didn't find it. Like, you with
Tolstoy's
your
gardener
like,
did though.
yeah, you with your like MD or PhD
with
or
your psychiatry degree.
You're not going to figure it out with this person right now. So like,
when did you last have fun? When did you last giggle, listener?
So this is funny because this is like the first time in medicine that, well, maybe not the first time, but one of the first times in medicine where we say outright, like, don't accept that at face value. It's probably something else hiding. So that's kind of how you have to treat meaninglessness at first. Is this actually a problem of death anxiety? Is it a problem of isolation, or is it a problem of like freedom and responsibility? So rather than asking them directly about the meaninglessness, you kind of try to explore the other things that give them distress in their life. Like, is this person calling out meaninglessness when really they don't feel close to anyone, and that's their problem? And granted, the two are very intertwined, but is their chief problem isolation? But it's easier for them to say that they lack meaning than that they're lonely. So that's kind of the avoiding that first mistake of, let me just commiserate with you about how meaningless life is, and let's start there. That's one thing that you got to avoid. The irony of all this is that we've been talking a lot about getting patients to uncomfortably turn their head to look at the problem in these previous 3 existential psychotherapy episodes. Look at your death and acknowledge that you can't survive forever and you will die. Okay, now go back and
Essential
like have some reprieve, or we're like, you are free and you can't escape that. Deal with it. We're like, we get patients to look head on these things, but with meaninglessness, you do the opposite. You don't want them to look head on at it, because
I didn't know we were saying
it's just going to lead you further into the pit.
Ones.
Yeah, No, I mean, no one
Pit.
wants to look head on the other ones, but it's therapeutic to look head on at those. It's not therapeutic
Preston's
to
doing like
look head
boot
on at
camp
this one.
therapy. He's like, soldier, try. You will never live a meaningful life if you can't look death in its face.
Yeah. It was like one of the quotes in the first one, like, he can only live a meaningful life is he who's prepared to die every day. It's a truth that we see repeated over and over again, or at least a pattern. I won't go so far as to declare it a truth. Nothing is true. We can't know anything. So when you aren't dealing this head on, what do you do instead? You make therapy fun, which is what what you are already getting at. There's a really lovely example in the book where Yalom's talking about this patient that he could not find any rapport with, and it was mutual in a way. He had bad countertransference for the patient. The patient did not have great transference towards him. And the patient he describes was this guy in his mid-30s who was completely isolated, and all he would do whenever he had free time was tinker on his stupid computer, is how Yalom saw it. He had this giant supercomputer.
He would hate people in 2026.
Like, how you crash out.
He'd be like, this is what you have the loneliness
man.
and mental health crises.
But this patient is like a special level
Yeah.
of computer science guy. Like, it was an IBM type supercomputer, like a mini engine in his office. Like, it's a big thing. And he was like, so what do you like to do for fun? I tinker with my computer. Do you hang out with anyone? No, I tinker with my computer. And then that was their back and forth. And Yalom's like, I hate you. Like, I think he didn't say that, but I think at one point he was like, I didn't like the patient. He was like annoying him. And he finally swallowed his pride and started actually asking him, what do you actually tinker on when you're tinkering with it? Like, what, like, let me come alongside you and try to figure out what screws you're twisting or what modifications you're making. And he came to realize that the tinkering, in a way, was actually a great creative outlet for the patient, and that he was coming up with new ideas how to optimize the computer and make it better. And I can, it can run X programs at a faster speed this way, or I can add this adjustment to it. Or maybe if I install this fan, it will be quieter. So, but I have to do it creatively because these problems like contradict each other. So once he realized that the patient like was finding meaning in this, so there's that creative meaning, he's constructing something and sharing it with the world that Frankl talks about. Then he was able to get to know the patient better and then channel those aspects of meaning into other ways, other forms of engagement. So Yalom actually says the step one is don't buy in and face the question head on, and step two is try your best, even more than other ways, to get to know the patient really well and really try to dig in and find anywhere in their life that they have little sparks or like little like tinders of that, those three categories of meaning, and then fan them,
Yeah.
Like, I found the spark, like, like, let's get this burning a little bit. You do have meaning when you work on your computer. How can we channel that into other things? So that's exactly what you're describing right now. And the thing that I would say is that I got from the book is to look at the most banal things that you may have grazed upon the first time and kind of go back and say, like, why does this person do that? Be very non-judgmentally curious as much as you can. And this kind of gets into actually a concept that Frankl describes when he tries to approach the problem meaninglessness with patients, which is called dereflection. Is that anything you've come across before?
Mm-mm.
So essentially, it's the idea that when you are in your circle of meaninglessness, despair, you focus a lot inward on yourself. And the point that he tries to make to dereflect to patients is to get them to immediately focus on others. And that's ultimately the best way that we found, at least, to come out of that galactic perspective tunnel, is to stop focusing on yourself so much and focus on others and bring the perspective outward again. And it's not helpful to be like, oh, like, think about how meaningful it is to focus on others. it's literally just like almost like distracting a child. Like, look at this.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. And then before you know it, you are finding a sense of meaning.
No, it's like you have to go underwater into the experiential versus being like on like a dry boat looking down into the water and being like, look, there are fish down there. It's like, no, you have to like get in the water. And
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that for me is both really fun about therapy, but also really interesting is that ability, for whatever reason, in ways my brain works well and does not work well, probably a combination. Like that thing of getting into an experience and being lost in it has always been very easy for me. Not great in other instances, but like with patients, it's interesting to see people's different, to continue the metaphor, their ability to actually like not stand outside of experience and look in on it or judge it or like, and, there's all sorts of pathologies we could name that, but to actually get into it. And I feel like for me, and sometimes this happens in exposure, like in response prevention therapy, that there'll be that moment where you're saying like you get that spark, whether that's joy or just like aliveness. And to me, that is like the best part of being a therapist or a psychiatrist is when you do get those little glimmers with people, especially the ones who started therapy, like maybe this guy that Yelm describes, like where they really, you can't feel their aliveness within, you can't feel it within them. Maybe they can't feel it. Maybe they can't share it. I don't know.
Yeah. It's not prima facie, as Yelm would say. He loves that phrase.
What does that mean
It's
again?
just it's Latin for like the main face of it.
Uh-huh. Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's not front and center. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean though? Do you know that feeling?
I know exactly what you
Yeah.
mean. And like that's why I'm using the analogy of like when you're on a camping trip
Yeah.
and you're like using the flint and you're just trying to get a spark to land somewhere, and then you're looking through all the tinder and you're like, oh my God, this single piece of grass is like starting to burn a little bit. And then like, let me do everything I can to like encourage this flame to build up. So it's like when I'm with the patient, I'm at the campsite, I'm looking for that little ember and let's go. Yeah, we got something. Let's cook with this.
Let's cook. Let them cook.
The discussion in the book actually takes another turn towards poetry. And there's this poem that I was really moved by Basho, who's a Japanese poet from the 1800s. And he wrote this haiku called, I don't know if it's called anything, something about Nizuma. Anyways, the haiku goes like this. When I look carefully, I see the Nizuma blooming by the hedge. That's it. That's the whole haiku. And I find that so beautiful. And I know it sounds kind of silly, but Nizuma, it's like shepherd's grass or shepherd's ear or something. It's like a dandelion. It's a weed. And what he's saying with this poem is, I am observing the most banal, often overlooked piece of nature, and I'm excited to see it. And the entirety of the poem is just me looking at this weed, and it's finally in bloom. What do you know? And I think that in its core is dereflection and focusing and engagement in your environment. And that's kind of why I sent you that meme yesterday, which I'm going to ask the producers to make it the thumbnail for this episode, which is it's the bell curve meme where well, I'll share. Let's put it on the screen right now. But essentially, on the on like the 5th% IQ, where there's like the fool, he's like, nice weather we're having today. And the middle IQ is like, no, we need to talk about meaninglessness and freedom and the ultimate question, what are we all gonna do? And then it goes to like 99th percentile IQ, and he's like, nice weather we're having today.
It really is. That meme is always is correct. Because you gave me a poem, I'm going to give you one that is exactly like this, which is also Mary Oliver, which is called I Go Down to the Shore. And it's like 8 lines. I go down to the shore in the morning. She lived, by the way, in Cape Cod in Provincetown. I go down to the shore in the morning, and depending on the hour of the waves are rolling in or moving out, and I say, oh, I'm miserable. What should I do? And the sea says in its lovely voice, excuse me, I have work to do. And I just love it. Just love it.
So good. That's
like,
really good.
It's like, excuse me, bitch, I have work to do.
I asked you a question. I need to. I have some patients that would benefit from that poem. I may share it with them. But yeah, the ultimate thing that you get at is that you're not going to answer the question. So stop focusing on yourself so much, because whether you like it or not, whether you asked for it or not, you're alive. So now what? Look, there's Nizuma blooming by the hedge. And this is kind of when Yalom gets into the ultimate answer, or the best way to help your patients, being with the kind of the Buddhist perspective. And this is actually the last sentence of the book, which I felt poignant enough to include here. The question of life is, as the Buddha taught, not edifying. One must immerse oneself in the river of life and let the question drift away.
Beautiful.
Or in other words, 42. Like in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
I haven't seen it, but I'm sure our listeners have.
But it's the same idea. Everyone, it was so obsessed. They made this perfect supercomputer and asked it, what is the meaning, what is the answer to life? And then it's like, the computer goes, I'm going to need to think about that. And then they come back, they're like, how long do you need to think? And he's like, 2 million years. And they come back 2 million years later, or 40,000 years later, however long it is. And they're like, okay, what is it? And the entire planet's gathered around the computer. They're all ready to celebrate. It's like a national holiday. They're like, we're getting the answer today. And they're like, do you have the answer, computer? And the computer's like, I do, but I don't think you're going to like it. And they're like, anything is fine. Just tell us. And it goes, 42. The crowd drops silent. And someone in the back is like, what? And they're like, yeah, 42. And they're like, we asked you what the answer to life is. And the computer's like, it's not a very good question. I'm supposed to answer a question, but where is even the question in this?
First ChatGPT.
Just have a back and forth. And then they abandon the computer or whatever.
Wait, what does ChatGPT answer if we ask it that question?
Ask it right now. I'm curious.
Can I do it from
what if
Google?
ChatGPT just says, I'm working. I got stuff to do. It's just like the ocean.
I'm working. Probably. I mean, that would be...
I bet you it's like, wow, Margaret, what a thoughtful question. You're really thinking about the hard stuff right now.
And that's not only deep, it's also insightful.
and that counts.
What? And that count with an M dash with a little sparkle emoji. What was the question from the movie?
What is the answer to life?
I'm using the browser version of this, so no one in our comments hate on me for using AI one time. What is the answer to life, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's thinking. We're going to go on this 2 million year commercial break.
It's like I'm going to need to think about that for a while.
Okay, wait. It said the classic answer, thanks to the Hitchhiker Guide to the Galaxy, is 42. Of course, that's a joke, blah, blah, blah. If you're asking more seriously, people usually land on a few big ideas. Meaning is something you create, not something handed to you. Relationships and connection tend to matter most. Growth, curiosity, and experience give life depth, and purpose can come from helping others, building something, or understanding the world. So the real answer isn't a number. It's something you define over time.
And that's what matters. Thanks, chat.
Thanks, chat.
You could have covered this whole episode. So this kind of brings us towards the end of the main part of the podcast. We're going to hop into Patreon world for a little bit to do some kind of reactions to one of my favorite speeches. We were originally going to look at Frankl interviewing a patient, but I couldn't find any of that. And I just found a bunch of choppy clips of him kind of just doing back and forth with reporters, essentially hashing out the ideas we've already talked about. So decided to go with something a little bit different. But we are going to skedaddle off to Patreon, and then we'll be back to close things out.
You can catch the next part of this on Patreon.
It's patreon.com/happypatientpod. You guys missed a fun, nice little video about goldfish in water and whatever else. We talked about the meaning of life. How's the show? Let us know what you think. We want to hear positive things. And Shanti wants to hear negative things. She wants us to be better. But we're complacent. We're happy the way we are. If you do want to say anything, you can go on Instagram and TikTok at Human Content Pods, or contact the team directly at howtobepatientpod.com. You can see more from me and Margaret. I'm on YouTube at It's Presro and Instagram, and Margaret's at Bad Art Every Day on Instagram, TikTok, Substack, and anywhere else. We've linked her in the show notes. It's kind of like a Where's Waldo of the internet. Where is Margaret? She's somewhere.
Mostly
but there's
Substack
probably going to be a link.
So, there's no ads.
Yeah, mostly Substack these days. You heard it here first. Shout out To all our listeners leaving kind feedback and awesome reviews, like Breester in the Spotify comments, who said, love the talk about acrylic nails for skin picking and scratching.
Okay.
Go watch the go watch the grab bag episode. We do have some like kind of fun tips in there about like just random off the wall stuff. Like if you're worried about skin picking and scratching, you can wear acrylic nails and you're not going to feel that feeling on your nails as much, and also does less damage. Who would have thought? Margaret would have thought is the answer.
Preston in our last episode will be wearing acrylics. Baddies. Sorry.
Thanks again for listening. We're your hosts, Preston Roche and Margaret Duncan. Our executive producers are me, Preston Roche, Margaret Duncan, Will Flannery, Kristen Flannery, Aaron Corney, Rob Goldman, and Shanti Brooke. Our editor and engineer is Jason Portizo. Our music is by Omer Benz-V. To learn more about our program disclaimer and ethics policy, submission verification and licensing terms, and our HIPAA release terms, go to howtobepatientpod.com or reach out to us at howtobepatient@human-content.com with any questions or concerns. How to Be Patient is a human content production.
How to be patient.
Thank you for watching. If you want to see more of us, or if you want to see, this is Lilac, she's my cat. She's going to be waving her hand at one of the floating boxes, which will lead to more episodes. Lilac, point to the other episodes. Lilac doesn't know what the internet is, but I swear they're there. They probably exist for real. But in the meantime, I'm just going to pet Lilac, and then I'm going to go dance in the background.